Hey guys, my name is Demas Rusli and I'm a photographer and designer based in Sydney, Australia. The past couple of months have been tough for all of us and we've all had to adjust to a new routine. With that in mind, I want to show you guys how I've been staying productive at home as well as how I've been staying creative. Hopefully you'll be inspired by this video and tutorial you're about to watch, and you can also create something similar around your neighborhood. Now let's get started. So I'm on a walk right now and I'm just walking around the neighborhood because in Australia we're still allowed to go on like exercise walks and also allowed to go out of the house to do some work. So today I'm doing a shoot for Samsung, shooting on the Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra 5G here. And yeah, I'm going to test out the night hyperlapse function. My wife and I have actually been walking around our neighborhood the last couple of weeks, and every time we walk outside the house we take a different route around the neighborhood. So the other day we bumped into the spot that we're actually about to get to, and I think it's pretty cool for long exposures and night time lapses. Alright, so we made it to the spot. So here I just show you guys, it's just an overpass overlooking some traffic here. So to set up and show you guys the night hyperlapse mode on this phone. So there was like a random flare showing up on the screen, so now I have to stand and cover up the lights so it doesn't show up in the time lapse. So next we have to take a photo of my hand and the phone. I'm standing here because the lighting is so much better than at the actual spot, but then we can tweak it later in Lightroom and play with the colors and make sure it looks right. Alright guys, so we just got done from shooting the spot. I'm gonna walk home now and I'll show you guys how I edit this on the computer. First, open up Adobe Premiere and start a new project. I then find the time-lapse footage I shot on my phone and drag it onto the timeline. Here I'm watching the video a couple of times just to see how the edit will work and to check if it loops properly. Most time-lapses like this will actually loop seamlessly. Then I created a JPEG of the first frame so I can work on it in Photoshop. Click this button here to capture the frame, and once that's saved, open the image up in Photoshop. I then imported the photo of me holding the phone into Lightroom and adjusted the colors to the way I wanted it. I've made a separate video on how I usually edit in Lightroom to color grade, and I'll link it up here in the top right of this video. But the general gist of this edit was to try to remove the orange tones and make the hand look more natural by making the temperature cooler. Once you've done editing in Lightroom, right click and select Edit In and then Edit in Photoshop. And then once it's open in Photoshop, hit Ctrl Command A to select all, and then Ctrl Command C to copy it into the previous image, and finally Ctrl Command V to paste it in. Next you want to position the phone image in the frame. To make it easier, make the layer opacity 50% so you can see below. Use the free transform tool to move and scale into place until you're happy with the position. Once that's done, crop the frame to 4:5 ratio as we'll be posting this to Instagram. Next, copy the background layer and using free transform, rotate it 180 degrees so it is upside down. Again, change the layer opacity to 50% to help position into place. Next, we're going to mask out the hand and the phone screen. To make a selection of the phone screen, use the polygonal lasso tool. And once it's selected, click the layer mask button. It will select the screen part, so you will need to invert the layer mask by clicking on it and then hitting Ctrl Command I to invert. Then do the same thing by selecting the hand and the outside of the phone. What you want to do is select the outside of the hand and the phone, and once that's selected, paint black onto the layer mask to hide it. Finally, tidy up the white edges by using the polygonal lasso tool again and painting black. Once this is done and you have completely masked out the phone and the hand, turn back on the upside down background layer. Then use the layer mask and with a black paintbrush with hardness 0, paint black on the bottom half to hide this part of the layer. To fill the sides, what I did was just to select the part next to the road using the rectangular marquee tool. Then I copied this to a new layer and used the free transform tool to stretch it to the edge of the image. I then did the same thing for the upside down road. Hold down Windows and Alt together or Command and Option together and drag the layer mask up to the layer above it to copy the same layer mask. Next, I duplicated both these layers and merged them together so I can remove the sign. To remove this sign, I simply selected around it roughly using the polygonal lasso tool, and then right click and then click fill. Make sure content aware is selected and hit OK. And then Photoshop removes the sign automatically for you. Next, let's create the effect of the road going through the phone. Click the top layer and first duplicate it. I usually like to duplicate layers just in case I need it later or if I make a mistake. Turn this layer off for now. Then click on the duplicated layer, make a selection of where the road is, and then paint black onto the layer mask to hide it from the layer. I then experimented with the top road too, to see what it would look like if both roads were going through the phone, but realized that the phone became barely visible and defeated the purpose of this edit, so I scrapped that idea. Next, I wanted to give a slight hint of the shape of the phone at the bottom, so I turned on the layer below it and made the opacity 10%, just so the viewer's eyes can just see the shape of the phone. Next, to create the phone screen look, create a new layer below the hand holding the phone and make a rough selection of the phone screen. Then I painted white into the selection and made the opacity 15%. I then used a layer mask and started painting black onto the bottom part with a soft brush to blend the screen to the road. Then I wanted to adjust the colors of the hand a bit more, so I added a color balance adjustment layer and tweaked the colors until it was matching with the background. I also used the replace color tool to remove this blue tint shadow from my hand. To do this, click the hand layer, then go up to image, adjustments, replace color, and use the eyedropper to pick the blue shadow. Then push the saturation all the way down and the lightness slightly down. You can also use the eyedropper with the plus icon to add to the selection if the first selection didn't pick up all the shadows. The last thing we're doing in Photoshop is to resize the image so it is 1080 by 1350 in pixels. This is the minimum size I usually do for Instagram uploads. Next, we're going to save each individual element into JPEGs and PNGs so we can bring them into Premiere. First, turn off the hand layer and the phone screen layer so you're just left with the background. Go to File, then export this as a JPEG. Then isolate the screen layer and export that out as a PNG. Do the same with the two phone layers too, both as PNGs. Alright, now here's where the magic starts to happen. Drag the background layer into Adobe Premiere onto the track above the video. Then change the sequence settings to 1080 by 1350 so it matches the images we exported from Photoshop. Then change the opacity of the image layer to 50%, and then using the scale and position tools, try to line up the video as much as possible to the image. Then move the image layer up to track V3 and duplicate the video layer up to V2 by clicking and dragging while holding Alt or Command. Rotate this video 180 degrees and again use the scale and position tools to line it up with the image layer. Next, click the image layer and then click the pen tool under opacity and make a selection around the top road. Once you're done with that, then click inverted to invert the mask and set the mask feather to 50. You can now see that the video below is showing through. I then tried to do the same for the bottom road but realized that Premiere was having issues with having two masks on the same layer. So I just brought up the bottom road video to the top and then again used the pen tool to select around the road to create a mask. Again, make the mask feather 50 and now we have the moving background layer. Next, I want to make the two roads not look identical, so I moved the position of the top road and then adjusted the length of the whole clip to be shorter. Then drag in the phone screen PNG onto the timeline and choose the blend mode screen for it, and then drag in the other two PNGs too on the layers above. I then realized two things. The screen layer didn't land in the right place, so I fixed that by adjusting the position, and also the very low opacity phone PNG didn't show up properly, so I went back to Photoshop and re-exported that layer at 100% opacity. I then dragged that back in and adjusted the opacity in Adobe Premiere. Alright, now we're almost there. Next, make room to create an adjustment layer just above the background layers. Then using this adjustment layer, tweak the colors of the background using the sliders on the Lumetri color panel. This is almost identical to adjusting the colors in Lightroom. Take your time with this and adjust it until you are happy. I then also adjusted the colors straight onto the background image layer, my hand holding the phone layer, and also finally on the whole thing using another adjustment layer at the very top. The whole aim of it was to push out the blues and give it that cyberpunk feel, and also making sure that the background is not too dark. You really want to take your time with this just to get the colors right and to get the colors the way you want it. Don't rush it and just have fun with it. Next, I wanted to find a good starting point so the thumbnail looked good, so I tweaked the positioning of the two video layers. I also reversed the video for the top road so it looks like one road was leading to the other. To do this, right click on the top road video layer and then hit speed duration and then reverse speed. At this point, I thought that the hand was looking a little bit flat and needed a bit more depth. So I went back to Photoshop and created a shadow. To do this, duplicate the hand holding the phone layer and then convert it to a smart object and rasterize it so that you would get a clean layer without a layer mask. Then go to image at the top, adjustments, and then hue saturation, and push the lightness all the way down to -100. This will make this layer black. Then go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and I went for a radius of 25. Finally, select the inside of the phone screen and delete it from this layer. This will create a nice shadow behind the hand and the phone. Now export this layer as a PNG at 100% and drag it into the Premiere file under the phone screen layer and change the opacity to 75%. I then decided to export it at the current status as the playback started to get slow on my laptop and I wanted to test the speed to make sure it wasn't too fast or too slow. Once exported, drag the video file to the top and test the speed by holding onto R and dragging the end of the clip. Once I was happy with the speed, I found a cool song from Epidemic Sounds and dragged it into the audio timeline. Adjust the song so that it loops endlessly and also adjust the length of the video so it matches the audio. So one last step. A few days later, after looking at this edit for a while, I realized that the area around the phone should be different than the area inside the phone to give the video more depth and to emphasize the phone a bit more. So I wanted to add a blur to the area outside the phone. To do this, duplicate the top road video layer and nest it so you can create a mask using the pen tool for inside the phone. Once that's done, go to the effects tab and search for Gaussian blur and drag it onto the bottom layer, and I made the blurriness 16. I then duplicated the background image layer and also masked this out and added a Gaussian blur of 7.5 so that everything outside the phone was blurry. And we're done. Go to File, Export, and export it at H.264 at the default settings with maximum depth and render quality turned on. Here is the final result. Alright guys, I hope you found that tutorial useful and thanks so much for watching my Samsung Sessions episode. To recap what I did, I walked around finding a cool spot in my neighborhood where I could shoot a night hyperlapse. I put my phone on a tripod and set up the shot. Then I turned on the camera app and switched it to the night hyperlapse mode. And finally I just shot the hyperlapse and waited for about 15 minutes. Then I went home and I created the whole animation using Adobe Premiere and Photoshop. So yeah, thanks so much for watching and I hope everyone's staying safe and staying creative. Bye!